Welcome back to a brand new episode of Lit Sports Online. This is Third and Goal. This is the first official episode of the new 2020 season. And of course, we all know how crazy it is now with COVID, and there's a lot of things that are going to be different. And we're going to talk about actually 5 specific games in a bit. But first, we're going to open up actually with something different that we haven't really done too much on the channel. And let's talk about fantasy football. And of course, we got Holden on camera, and Holden's the only person I know, well, one of the best people I know that knows fantasy sports in general. In our league, I think, what have you been to the championship twice?
Yeah, I've made playoffs every year. I haven't won the big game in this league, though.
You're the Andy Reid of our league. Maybe this year might be your year. I don't know. But I do have a couple of questions. Now, we got a little crazy and decided to do a 16-man league. Now, we're going to see how this shit goes because the draft was a crazy shit show. But tell us, just in general, I really want to know how COVID's going to affect fantasy football. You and me have talked a little bit about that. Tell us, what's new, at least in our league, what we're doing.
Yeah, so, with our league, we added IR spots this year that we didn't have in previous seasons. And, I feel like if you're playing this year, you kind of have to do that, especially if you don't have a deep bench, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to have all these potentially your running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, just, going out on this COVID IR for 3 to 4 weeks. And if that happens, you have to be able to not drop those guys off your roster, but still be able to pick up some depth to kind of fill the gap while they're out. And that's what these IR slots allow you to do. Now, with our league, again, it's 16 teams and it's a shallow bench. So it may or may not be enough. We're going to find out. But that's what I would recommend to people that are commissioning leagues is for this season, you're going to have IR and you're going to have or a deep bench because otherwise it's just going to be a shit show where everyone's dropping stars off their team because they're sick and not getting points out of them. That's
very true. Speaking of which, so, we did do a 16-team league, which I'm pretty sure typically most leagues aren't doing, but, we have a pretty big group of friends that, 2 people came back this year that we wanted on. So we said, fuck it, why not? Let's do it. The draft, that was interesting. Now, and I remember the way I drafted actually one of our guys in our league, our friend Sean, drafted a lot of younger players, and with good reason. I was actually looking for a Justice Hill. I thought, or a Judy. I thought these younger rookies, looking back, they're probably going to be more beneficial if, say, a veteran gets sick. I think the role of the backup player in general has never been more important, just to be ready to go at any given point. Did any of that affect how you drafted this year?
Under normal circumstances, it would have, but since we only had 5 bench spots, I felt like I wasn't able to draft a lot of those depth guys that I normally would.
Yeah, that's true. And like I said, we're going to talk fantasy football a lot more, but, I remember that we did some really interesting stuff with COVID and the injury reserve. That's a interesting thing I've never actually done before, never even seen in leagues before, for obvious reason. We've never had a pandemic before, or else me and you would be doing this live on set. But that being said, let's go into some of the games this week. Now, typically in years past, we've gone through and done all 16 games, any given Sunday. But this year, we decided to break it down and just focus on the big games. Our first game is Thursday night. We have Houston at Kansas City. Kansas City, actually, and we're going to be also picking against the spread. Kansas City is favored by 10 points. Who do you got, Holden?
Well, that's a pretty wide spread, but I think for good reason because we know how good the Chiefs are and they're playing at home, and the Houston Texans project to have a pretty poor defense this year. So for that reason, I can see this going in favor of KC by about 10 points. I think that's a good spread in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think Houston was, made some stupid moves in the offseason. And I don't think Deshaun Watson alone can do it on his own. So, yeah, I think Kansas City runs up to score. They celebrate their Super Bowl victory and stuff. Next up, we do have a regular Sunday game. We have Miami at New England. Now, I picked this game with New England actually being the 5.5 favorite New England interests me this year because this is the first year, without Brady even on the roster. And like, what has it been, like 20 years? You had 20 years with one of the best quarterbacks. Now you open up the season with Cam Newton, who we've seen what he can do with the Carolina Panthers. Negative, they have their 5.5.5 point favorite over Miami. Justin, what are you thinking?
I mean, if this was a straight up pick 'em, I would take New England, but with that spread, I honestly could see this coming down to like New England winning just barely by like a field goal.
Yeah.
Because we know how close these rivalry games can be with the Dolphins and the Patriots. So I'll go ahead and take the Miami side because of the 5.5 points in their favor.
I'm going to take the Patriots, honestly. This is Patriots at home. Bill Belichick has something to prove. Now, of course, the Patriots don't have the weapons. They don't have a Tom Brady. They have Cam Newton now, and Cam Newton kind of opens that offense up a little bit more because he can run. He's a mobile guy. So defenses are going to have to contend with that, plus outside of the Belichick system. Now, of course, we're not looking – he has Julian Edelman. It's the main receiver I think he has right now. I mean, he doesn't have a big body number one, but I think Cam Newton can potentially make this a 7-point game. I can see that happening. I don't have much faith in the Miami Dolphins. We've seen what they do in season openers. Let's just ask how they did against the Ravens week 1 last year.
Well, yeah, and then the thing with the Dolphins is I think they're still a year or two down the road from completing their rebuild and actually being a good team in the league. And they're still not there. But I also know that the Dolphins always have at least one game against the Patriots each year that's super close or they even win. So I'm willing to take the gamble on them here just because of that.
Yeah, and in theory, you do make a good point because there has been no preseason, and without preseason, if you watched any of college football that's happened, whatever you want to call what's happening, I actually can reference BYU versus Navy. Navy apparently did not hit all preseason. I guess they didn't have a lot of practices or whatever. Niumatalolo, the head coach for Navy, did it for safety concerns. He also stated, but BYU just ran it up on him because Navy wasn't ready. And in the NFL, how many teams are not going to be ready, especially a Patriots team that has a new quarterback for the first time in like 20 years. So I don't know. That might be a smart bet, honestly, Justin. So I'll give you credit on that one. Now, next up, we Sunday Night Football game that should interest you. Dallas versus LA. Dallas comes in as a 2.5-point favorite. That's not even a field goal. Justin, what's your pick?
Well, I like LA at home here. I mean, just because the home field advantage and the fact that I think the Rams still have a good defensive unit together with Donald and Ramsey. It's going to be an interesting game because we know that the Cowboys are loaded on offense, but it's going to be Lamb's first career start as a rookie, so I don't know how much of a factor he's going to be here. And the Rams have beaten Dallas in recent years, so I'm going to go with the Rams here.
I'm actually going to make Chris Gordon proud, and I'm going to go with Dallas. I'm going to split the decision. We're going to talk about that. Dallas, in my opinion, has a very solid running game, and I think that's going to be the key to this. Yeah, you just paid Jalen Ramsey a lot of money. I don't think they do a lot of passing because of that alone. So Dallas is going to have to win up front. I think Ezekiel Elliott is a running back that can honestly carve up the Rams defense. And it's a 2.5-point favorite. Yeah, I could see this happening. So moving on to Monday Night Football game. Monday Night Football, there's two games. First up is Tennessee in Denver. Denver is the -3. They're the 3-point favorite. But Von Miller is injured. So Denver is without their defensive captain. Does that affect how you pick this game?
It definitely does to a degree. I mean, so the Broncos, they added some other good defensive players in the offseason. They got Bouye and they got Jarrell Casey. So they added some pieces there to bolster the defense. But, yeah, the Von Miller news was just that's really bad. He could actually be out the whole season depending on how bad this ankle injury is. So but I'm going to go with Tennessee here, not just because of the Von Miller injury, but because I just looking at it like, Tennessee ended last year really hot. I think Henry's going to have a good game here. And I also think that Jonnu Smith has a potential breakout game as a tight end. The Denver defense was not good against tight ends last year. So it'll be interesting to see if he takes a big leap as a young star, upcoming star in the league at tight end.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Tennessee on this one. The Von Miller news really just came out of left field. It was like, man, that's a blow to their defense. Yeah, of course they've added people, but Tennessee has Derrick Henry. And my last football memories of last season were at M&T Bank Stadium watching Derrick Henry run all over the Baltimore Ravens, who have a pretty solid defense in general. I don't think I think they pick up where they left off. I think Tennessee is in a good position to do well this year, actually, and I think they really show up on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about last year is that I don't remember any running backs running all over the Ravens except for Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry. I didn't see anyone else do it.
Yeah, and you know what? When you really think about it, that they're the main teams that beat us. So I mean, a solid run game like that, yeah, who could? I'm still mad about that, but that's a different episode. Next up, we are going to move. So going back to the 3-point favorite, I do think Tennessee covers that. I think they beat them by at least a touchdown, honestly. At least a touchdown. Now, the second Monday Night Football game, you see Ben Roethlisberger returning back with Pittsburgh as they go to New York to take on the Giants. Pittsburgh is the 3-point favorite. There's a lot of questions behind this Steelers team in this game. I honestly think it will be one of the most watched primetime games this weekend because people are going to be curious. Can Big Ben do it? Is this the last season for Big Ben? Can he do what he has done in years past? Holden, what are your thoughts?
Well, so I share your concerns about the Steelers. I don't think they're going to have an amazing season. I do think they're going to be respectable, mainly because of their defense, but I have big questions about how good Big Ben's going to be here in this season. I also have questions about the Steelers' offensive line and James Conner's durability. So there's a number of questions for me on the offensive side, but they still have a great defense. And in this particular matchup, though, in week one, I am going to say the Steelers run away with this because the Giants have a really bad secondary, and I think that's going to really open up the receiving core of the Steelers here. And I'm also looking at, like, Daniel Jones on the Giants. Okay, he's a respectable fantasy quarterback, but he fumbles too much for a real-life quarterback. So I think between Fumble Machine Jones and the bad secondary, it's not going to look good for the Giants here.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants, we know what we're going to get with them, and it's not good. You have T.J. Watt coming out the edge. He's going to give Danny Jones nightmares for weeks, no question. And you got Minkah Fitzpatrick in the secondary to pick the ball off. Unfortunately, the Steelers' defense is still amazing. But, yes, like you said, the offense, there's a lot of questions there. I personally, I don't think Big Ben – I just don't see it. The man's talked retirement for the last 3 seasons. But, again, injuries do certain things to you. It either makes you want to do better or it makes you scared. I don't see Big Ben as the type of being scared, but at the same time, I just don't see him being the Big Ben we've known that has – done so well in the AFC North and the NFL in general, getting the rings that he has, having the near Hall of Fame career that, he's going to have by the time he retires. I just don't see this season being good for the Steelers, honestly, but I do see them running away with this game. I think this game is a good start for them. It may or less, I hate to disrespect the Giants like this, but it almost is like a preseason warm-up game to get Ben ready for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's a nice tune-up game for the Steelers, and it's a game where Big Ben is actually going to be fresh and not beat up since it's week one. But like I said, I just don't think longer term into the season the Steelers' offense is going to be looking all that good. But I like them here in week one.
Yeah, this week one I do like them, and we're going to see where it goes. There's a lot of football's back, and I'm super excited. Of course, it's weird. Usually we're used to filming in person, as we've done the last 4 years. But I'm glad football's back. We got a lot of content coming for you next week. Don't forget, next week we're going to give out our first game ball of the week. So who knows who will have the best game this week. Also, we have an episode of Third and Goal coming up. I mean, not Third and Goal, Charm City Beat. That's coming up actually tomorrow, either tomorrow or Friday, so stay tuned for that. As for Justin and I, don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a good night.